What an introduction. That actually made me feel a little old. So I am so happy to be here today with you. Thank you for asking me. Welcome to La Crosse, the heart of the 95th Assembly District, where I get to serve for the people of this area, and it is an honor and a pleasure. I love my job. I don't usually start this way, but in honor of Terry Hicks being here, I'm going to start with a joke. Because in the wonderful Union Herald, his newspaper that he publishes that gives us all sorts of good information on what's happening with Union, he always has a joke page too. So this is my St. Patty's Day joke. There were two people sitting at the bar together, and one looked, it was a pub in Boston, Irish pub. One looked at the other and says, "Well, you look like you could be from Ireland." And his buddy next to him says, "Well, actually I am." And the first person said, "Well, I am too." And he said, "Well, what city are you from?" And the first person said, "I'm from Kilkenny." And the next person says, "Well, I am too. Who would have guessed? What a small world." "Well, where did you go to school in Kilkenny?" "I went to O'Donnell Elementary School." "Well, I did too. Faith and Agora, who would have guessed? What a small world that we would end up together." In walks Vicky and sits at the end of the bar, and the barkeep comes up and says, "Oh, it's going to be a long night." And she says, "Why do you say that?" And he says, "The Murphy twins have been drinking again." Thank you, Terry, for your address. He's our local labor historian and such an asset to our community. Thank you for being here. So I was asked to give a legislative wrap-up, which is kind of interesting for me because this has been a strange year. We actually are in recess now in the Assembly. The earliest that we have recessed in the 5 years that I've been in the Assembly, and actually the earliest that we have recessed since the 1970s. I've got mixed feelings about that because on one hand I'd like to be in there fighting for some good issues. On the other hand, it puts a stop to some of the wild ideas that are coming through now. Wild and terrible ideas that are coming through now. So our last 2 weeks in February when we were in office, it was over 250 bills that we voted on. We were up till 2 in the morning voting on bills. And I always feel like nothing really great happens after 2 in the morning. That was a lesson I learned from my dad when I was dating. And indeed, it was true in the Assembly. We had bills that came in front of us that didn't have a full public hearing. We had bills that made it harder to vote, thanks to the Republican majority, that altered campaign finance laws, that attacked open government by eliminating the Government Accountability Board, instead putting in place a partisan board that is appointed partisan people to sit on that board, as a majority party gets the majority of the appointments. It took billions of dollars from our state colleges and universities, severely cut funding for K-12 education. That's what the majority did this year. They cut women's access to health care statewide and cut low-income families' access to affordable care. That's what the Republican majority has done. They loosened environmental oversight. In fact, when you looked at the high-cap wells in the Central Sands area of our state, there was actually an idea that came from the other side because of the high volume of water that's pumping and the streams and the lakes are actually going down, they're receding. The idea was, well, let's just build another high-cap well in the middle of the lake and you could just pump out water from underground to go into the lakes. At which point my colleague Nick Milroy from up Superior area said, well, you're going to have to cement in the bottom of the lakes if you actually want that to work. And that's kind of hard on the aquaculture and the fish. That's kind of going to be tough on your fishing. They also slashed important local control measures for counties, cities, and schools. Now, the problem with that is this was supposedly the party of local control. What's happened to the party of local control? I will tell you that they are out of touch and that we need a change in Wisconsin. So I would like to thank Jay for that incredible introduction, and since he brought up the topic, I'd like to talk a little bit on human trafficking with you. So I don't know how many people really understand have a full understanding of human trafficking, what it is. For some people, it's kind of an obscure term. Who's discovered in a restaurant kitchen and he's stripped of his passport and held against his will. So all trafficking victims share one essential experience, and that is the loss of freedom. Now, this is a huge issue. It's an international issue, and it's an issue here in Wisconsin. So you may be asking, why should labor be involved? Because some people think it's just a social issue or a public health issue or a criminal issue. But we have to make sure that people understand what human trafficking is and that it's here in Wisconsin. The labor fight has to include not just the fight for higher wages, not just the fight for union strength, not just the fight for employee rights, but also the eradication of modern-day slavery. The way I look at dealing with those big, overwhelming issues is that we take one bite at a time. We take that first bite and we get that victory. Then we take that second bite and get that next victory. And I am like the gnat that is in someone's ear. I never give up and I never stop. If a door is shut to me, I knock on the next door. And if that door is shut, I knock on the next door. If I don't get the answer I want behind that door, I knock on the next door. And with the help of Representative LaTanya Johnson from Milwaukee, we have made headway on this issue in Wisconsin, and I am proud of that. So we have legislation that makes it prohibits charging minors with prostitution in Wisconsin and instead targets the true criminals, which are the traffickers, right? Those are the people we want in jail. That part of our bill did not get picked up by Amy Loudenbeck, who was in the majority. She picked up most of our legislation and called us and said, I have a bill that looks an awful lot like yours. In fact, some of it was word for word like ours. But that's another bite I can get. So I'm gonna go along with it. She said, would you like to be on the co-sponsorship memo? Would you like to be second and third on the bill? And I sat down with LaTanya first, and we said yes, because it's going to help children in our state, and we set our egos aside. So this bill protects trafficked youth by expanding the scope and services that are available to victims. So when a child is found and brought in for human trafficking, instead of being sent back out in the street, they're provided with a safe place to stay. They get mental health treatment or health care. Because as you can guess, if a child has been out on the street in that twisted, tormented situation of human trafficking, they've got some issues. But we think that these children can be put back on the right track and become productive members of society, and that's what we want, and it looks like that's what we're going to get. So we're staying with us. We're still hoping that that bill gets signed, but it's on the governor's desk right now. It passed the Assembly and the Senate a couple weeks ago. So I also want to talk a little bit about right to work. I don't know if you've already talked about that today, but so it was about a year ago yesterday, that right to work was passed in our state. So let's talk about what's happened since then. So according to the Department of Workforce Development, there have been 10,000 layoffs in 2015. 10,000 layoffs. Wisconsin is 37th in the nation in private sector job growth in the last year. 37th in the nation. And we're dead last in new business startups. Dead last. I don't think right to work was the economic fix that we were looking for in Wisconsin. And let's look at our middle class. That economic driver in Wisconsin. So according to the Pew Trust, Wisconsin's middle class is shrinking faster than any other state. Shrinking faster than any other state. Between 2000 and 2013, the middle class in Wisconsin has shrunk by 5.7%. The next closest is Ohio at 5.2%. So again, I set this at the Republicans' doorstep. I think this is post-Act 10 fallout. This is what happens when you gut your middle class, your economic feeder, your middle class of the state. Republicans are out of touch. We have to have a change. And Democrats introduced a package yesterday of bills called the Bring Back the Middle Class package. And this is just the start for us, but we wanted to do it on the anniversary. It includes student loan debt relief. This is real debt relief, not the crumbs that were thrown out in the 11th hour by the Republicans because they saw the polling and they knew it didn't look good for them. This is real relief where people can refinance that student loan debt just like they can car loans, just like they can house loans, to provide real monthly relief to families that are trying to make ends meet. We're offering more retirement security in that package. We're offering earned sick days for workers to care for themselves and their loved ones. And finally, more affordable child care opportunities for Wisconsin families. So we know that this is an election year. And I appreciated Stephanie talking about the April election. We know that's not the turnout that we usually want, that we usually need. So I encourage you to vote, talk to people, get people to vote. We need a good vote in that election. And stay in touch for November. I'm excited about this year. This could be a real tide-changing year for us. It's a presidential year, and you see what's happening over on the Republican side as their divide and conquer ways of doing things have now come to full fruition with Donald Trump. And so stay in touch, stay engaged. I think this is going to be a changing tides year, but we can't do it without you. Thank you.